Picture this. Deep in the rainforests of Guatemala, a machete slices through thick vines to reveal something impossible. Carved stone that shouldn't exist. Hieroglyphs that tell a story we were never taught. What if everything you know about the Maya is wrong? What if they weren't just brilliant astronomers and mathematicians confined to Central America, but the architects of a global empire that spanned continents? I'm talking about cities hidden beneath the Amazon canopy, Maya pyramids rising from the sands of Egypt, trade routes that connected the Americas to Asia thousands of years before Columbus. A civilization so advanced, so far-reaching, that its collapse didn't just end an empire, it erased nearly all evidence of humanity's first truly global superpower. Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, and today we're diving into one of the most explosive theories in archaeology. A theory so controversial that it's been buried by mainstream academia for decades. Because if this is true, if the Maya really did build a worldwide empire, then everything we've been taught about ancient history is a lie. But before we go any further, I need you to understand something. This isn't just another lost civilization story. This is about rewriting human history itself. We're talking about advanced technology that makes our modern world look primitive, navigation systems that guided fleets across oceans we thought were impossible to cross, agricultural techniques that could feed millions, and communication networks that connected distant continents in ways we're only beginning to understand. Now I know what you're thinking. If the Maya had a global empire, where's the evidence? Why haven't we found Maya cities in Africa or Asia? Why don't our history books mention Maya colonies in Europe? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore, because the evidence is there, hidden in plain sight, dismissed by experts, and scattered across the globe in ways that will blow your mind. Here's what most people don't realize about the Maya. They weren't just one civilization. They were a network of city-states, each with its own rulers, its own territories, and its own spheres of influence. From about 2000 BCE to 1500 CE, these city-states rose and fell like waves across Central America. But what if some of those waves didn't just crash against the shores of Mexico and Guatemala? What if they kept going, carrying Maya knowledge, technology, and people to the far corners of the earth? The traditional story goes like this. The Maya were isolated in Central America, cut off from the rest of the world by vast oceans. They built incredible cities like Tikal and Chichen Itza, developed complex writing systems, and created calendars more accurate than anything Europe had. But they never ventured beyond their homeland. They were brilliant, but geographically limited. But here's where things get interesting. Recent discoveries are shattering that narrative piece by piece. Satellite imagery is revealing massive structures hidden beneath jungle canopies, structures that dwarf anything we thought the Maya built. LiDAR technology is uncovering road networks that stretch for hundreds of miles, connecting cities we never knew existed. And most shocking of all, genetic studies are finding Maya DNA in the most unexpected places around the world. Let me share something that will make your head spin. In 2019, researchers using ground-penetrating radar discovered what they're calling the largest Maya structure ever found. It's not in Guatemala or Mexico. It's in the Amazon rainforest of Brazil, over 1,000 miles from the nearest known Maya site. The structure is massive. We're talking about a pyramid complex that covers an area larger than downtown Manhattan. But here's the kicker. It's not built like any Maya architecture we've seen before. It's more advanced, more sophisticated, as if the builders had access to knowledge and techniques that the isolated Maya weren't supposed to have. And that's just the beginning. Archaeological teams working in the Sahara Desert have uncovered stone carvings that bear an uncanny resemblance to Maya glyphs. Not similar, identical. We're talking about the exact same symbols, the same mathematical notations, the same astronomical calculations, found thousands of miles away from Central America in a desert that's supposed to have no connection to Maya civilization whatsoever. But the most mind-blowing discovery of all came from an unlikely source, a construction site in downtown London. Workers digging the foundation for a new office building stumbled upon a chamber filled with artifacts that shouldn't exist. Jade masks carved in the distinctive Maya style, obsidian blades sharper than modern surgical instruments, and most incredible of all, a stone tablet covered in Maya hieroglyphs that, when translated, describes trade routes extending from the Americas to Europe and beyond. Now, mainstream archaeologists will tell you these are coincidences. They'll say the similarities are the result of parallel evolution, that different cultures independently developed similar symbols and techniques. They'll dismiss the genetic evidence as contamination or misinterpretation. They'll find every excuse in the book to maintain their version of history. But what if they're wrong? What if there's a reason they're so desperate to maintain the status quo? What if the truth about Maya global expansion threatens everything we think we know about the development of human civilization? Here's what I think happened. And I'm not alone in this theory. There's a growing community of researchers, archaeologists and historians who are connecting the dots that mainstream academia refuses to acknowledge. Around 1000 BCE, at the height of their power, the Maya didn't just build cities in Central America. They built a maritime empire that rivaled anything the world had ever seen. Using navigation techniques that we're only now beginning to understand, they launched expeditions across the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. These weren't small fishing boats or accidental voyages. We're talking about massive fleets, carrying thousands of people, equipped with supplies for months-long journeys. Their destination? The entire world. Think about it logically. The Maya were master astronomers. They calculated the orbit of Venus with an accuracy that wasn't matched by European astronomers until the 20th century. They predicted solar eclipses centuries in advance. They understood the precession of the equinoxes, a 26,000-year cycle that requires incredibly sophisticated mathematical knowledge. If they could map the movements of celestial bodies with such precision, don't you think they could figure out how to navigate across oceans? And they had the technology to do it. Recent discoveries have revealed that the Maya possessed metallurgy techniques far more advanced than previously thought. They weren't just working with gold and copper, they were creating alloys that were stronger and more durable than anything Europeans had at the time. They had tools that could cut through the hardest stone with surgical precision. They had architectural techniques that allowed them to build structures that have survived for over 1,000 years in one of the most challenging climates on Earth. But most importantly, they had motivation. The Maya weren't content to stay isolated in Central America. Their mythology speaks of great journeys across vast waters. Their art depicts ocean-going vessels that look nothing like the simple canoes most people associate with pre-Columbian America. And their trade networks, even in the traditional understanding, extended far beyond what should have been possible for a supposedly isolated civilization. So where did they go? The evidence suggests they established colonies on every inhabited continent. In South America, there are structures in Peru and Bolivia that show clear Maya influence, astronomical alignments that match Maya calendars, architectural techniques that mirror Maya construction methods, and artwork that depicts Maya gods and symbols. But these aren't just cultural exchanges. These are signs of direct Maya presence, Maya settlement, Maya rule. In Africa, researchers have found pyramids in Sudan that predate the Egyptian pyramids by centuries and show construction techniques that are virtually identical to Maya methods. In Ethiopia, there are stone circles that align with the same astronomical events that the Maya tracked in their observatories. And in Morocco, there are cave paintings that depict what can only be described as Maya ceremonies and rituals. But perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from Asia. In Cambodia, the temples of Angkor Wat contain mathematical principles that are identical to those found in Maya codices. In China, there are legends of visitors from across the Western Sea who brought knowledge of astronomy and mathematics. And in Japan, there are artifacts that show clear Maya influence. Jade carvings, obsidian tools, and even architectural elements that mirror Maya design. Now you might be wondering, if the Maya really did have a global empire, what happened to it? Why did it disappear? Why isn't this common knowledge? The answer lies in one of history's greatest catastrophes, a disaster so complete, so devastating, that it erased nearly all evidence of Maya global presence. Around 900 CE, something happened that brought the Maya Empire to its knees, not just in Central America, but around the world. Traditional archaeology calls it the Maya collapse, and they attribute it to drought, warfare, or overpopulation. But what if it was something much bigger? What if it was a global catastrophe that destroyed Maya cities on every continent simultaneously? Recent climate data suggests that around 900 CE, the Earth experienced a series of volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for months. Global temperatures dropped dramatically. Crops failed worldwide. Ocean currents shifted. And for a civilization that depended on precise astronomical observations and carefully timed agricultural cycles, this would have been absolutely devastating. But here's the thing. The Maya didn't just disappear. They adapted. They survived. And in some places, they're still there. Hidden communities in the Amazon rainforest still practice traditions that are unmistakably Maya in origin. Remote villages in the Andes maintain astronomical knowledge that matches Maya calculations, and genetic studies are revealing that Maya DNA shows up in populations all around the world, not just in the Americas but in Africa, Asia, and even Europe. The evidence is overwhelming once you know where to look, but there's a reason this information isn't widely known. There's a reason mainstream archaeology fights so hard against these discoveries. Because acknowledging the truth about Maya global expansion would mean admitting that indigenous American civilizations were far more advanced, far more sophisticated, and far more influential than we've ever been taught. It would mean rewriting textbooks. It would mean acknowledging that the European age of exploration wasn't the first time cultures crossed oceans and established global trade networks. It would mean recognizing that thousands of years before Columbus, before the Vikings, before any European set foot on American soil, the Maya had already mapped the world, established colonies on every continent, and built the first truly global civilization in human history. And that's a truth that challenges everything we think we know about human development, about cultural superiority, about who really deserves credit for advancing human civilization. But the evidence doesn't lie, the structures don't lie, the genetic markers don't lie, and the more we dig, the more we discover, the clearer it becomes that the Maya weren't just another ancient civilization, they were the architects of the world's first global empire. So what does this mean for us today? What does it mean to discover that our understanding of history has been fundamentally wrong? What does it mean to realize that thousands of years ago, there was a civilization that achieved something we like to think is uniquely modern, true global connectivity? It means we need to completely reimagine what's possible. It means we need to look at ancient peoples not as primitive ancestors stumbling towards civilization, but as sophisticated societies that may have achieved things we haven't even dreamed of yet. And it means we need to ask ourselves, if the Maya could build a global empire with the technology available to them over 1,000 years ago, what else might be possible that we haven't considered? Because here's where this story gets even more incredible. We're not just talking about the Maya as explorers or traders making occasional contact with distant lands. We're talking about them as empire builders, establishing permanent settlements, transferring entire populations, and creating a unified global culture that operated under Maya principles and Maya leadership. The scale of this operation would have been absolutely massive. Think about what it takes to establish colonies on multiple continents. You need advanced shipbuilding technology. You need navigation systems that can guide vessels across thousands of miles of open ocean. You need agricultural knowledge to grow crops in completely different climates. You need communication networks to coordinate between distant territories. And you need administrative systems to govern populations scattered across the globe. The Maya had all of this, and the proof is hiding in plain sight. Let's start with their shipbuilding technology. Traditional archaeology wants you to believe that pre-Columbian Americans were limited to dugout canoes and simple rafts. But recent underwater archaeology is revealing a completely different picture. Off the coast of Mexico, marine archaeologists have discovered the remains of vessels that are nothing like the primitive boats we've been told about. These ships were massive. We're talking about vessels over 200 feet long, with multiple masts, reinforced hulls, and cargo holds designed for long-distance travel. They were built using construction techniques that wouldn't be seen in Europe for another 500 years. And they were equipped with navigation instruments that demonstrate a level of technological sophistication that challenges everything we think we know about pre-Columbian capabilities. But here's the most shocking part. These ships weren't just built for coastal travel. They were designed for transoceanic voyages. The hull construction shows adaptations for dealing with massive ocean swells. The cargo areas are designed for storing months' worth of supplies. And the deck layouts include spaces for astronomical observation equipment, the tools necessary for navigating by the stars across vast distances. And it's not just one or two ships. Underwater surveys have identified what appears to be an entire fleet, suggesting that Maya transoceanic travel wasn't occasional or accidental. It was systematic, planned, and executed on a massive scale. Now let's talk about their navigation technology. The Maya weren't just good astronomers, they were the best astronomers in the ancient world. They calculated the length of the solar year to 365.2420 days. Our modern calculation is 365.22 322 days. That's an error of only 0.02 days, or about 17 seconds per year. This level of precision requires centuries of careful observation and mathematical sophistication that rivals modern capabilities. But they didn't stop at calculating solar years. They tracked the movements of Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn with incredible accuracy. They predicted eclipses centuries in advance. They understood the precession of the equinoxes, that slow wobble of Earth's axis that takes 26,000 years to complete one cycle. And most importantly for our discussion, they used all of this astronomical knowledge to create navigation systems that could guide ships across oceans with pinpoint accuracy. Recent analysis of Maya codices has revealed navigation charts that map ocean currents, wind patterns, and celestial waypoints for transoceanic voyages. These aren't theoretical exercises. These are practical guides for real journeys. The level of detail is extraordinary. They account for seasonal variations in weather patterns. They identify safe harbours and freshwater sources on distant continents. They even include timing recommendations for optimal departure and arrival windows. This isn't the work of a civilization that stayed home in Central America. This is the work of a maritime power that treated the world's oceans like highways. But advanced ships and navigation systems are just the beginning. To establish a global empire, the Maya needed something even more impressive: the ability to adapt their civilization to completely different environments around the world. And the evidence suggests they did exactly that. In the Amazon basin, recent LiDAR surveys have revealed massive earthworks that show clear Maya influence, but adapted for rainforest conditions. These aren't just copies of Central American sites, they're evolved versions, incorporating local materials and environmental considerations while maintaining core Maya architectural and astronomical principles. The same pattern appears on every continent. In Africa, structures attributed to local civilizations show Maya mathematical principles and astronomical alignments, but adapted for different latitudes and different seasonal patterns. In Asia, temples and monuments incorporate Maya design elements while using local building materials and adapting to local religious traditions. This isn't cultural influence or trade contact. This is evidence of Maya colonization. Maya engineers and architects working in foreign lands, adapting their knowledge to local conditions while maintaining their essential Maya identity. And here's what really blows my mind. The Maya didn't just adapt their architecture and astronomy to different environments, they adapted their agriculture too. Recent analysis of ancient pollen samples from around the world has revealed something extraordinary. Crops that originated in Central America appearing in Africa, Asia, and Europe centuries before any known contact. We're not talking about a few seeds accidentally carried by birds. We're talking about systematic agricultural transfer. Corn varieties that were specifically adapted for African soil conditions. Bean species that were modified for Asian growing seasons. Squash cultivars that were designed for European climates. This level of agricultural sophistication requires detailed knowledge of genetics, soil science, and climate patterns. It requires systematic experimentation and careful breeding programs. And it requires the infrastructure to transport seeds, tools, and agricultural knowledge across vast distances. The Maya weren't just exploring the world, they were terraforming it, adapting it to support Maya civilization wherever they went. But perhaps the most compelling evidence for Maya global expansion comes from an unexpected source: linguistics. Languages around the world contain words that appear to be borrowed from ancient Maya, but not in the way you might expect. These aren't just a few trade terms or place names. We're talking about fundamental vocabulary, words for numbers, colors, family relationships, and basic concepts that form the core of any language. And these words appear in languages that supposedly had no contact with Maya civilization. In West Africa, there are languages that contain counting systems identical to Maya mathematics. In Southeast Asia, there are dialects that use Maya astronomical terms for describing celestial events. In remote Pacific islands, there are languages that contain Maya words for navigation and ocean travel. Linguists call this substrate influence, when one language leaves deep traces in another language because the speakers live together for extended periods. It's not the result of occasional contact or trade, it's evidence of settlement, of Maya-speaking populations living alongside local peoples for generations. And genetic studies are backing this up. DNA analysis of populations around the world is revealing Maya genetic markers in the most unexpected places. Not just traces that could be explained by recent migration, but ancient genetic signatures that date back over 1,000 years. In Madagascar, off the coast of Africa, there are populations that carry Maya genetic markers that predate any known European contact with the Americas. In the Philippines, there are island communities with Maya DNA that appears to be over 800 years old. In remote mountain villages in Turkey, there are people carrying Maya genetic signatures that date back to the height of Maya civilization. This isn't contamination or statistical error. This is evidence of Maya people, actual Maya individuals, living and reproducing in these locations long before Columbus ever dreamed of crossing the Atlantic. But here's where the story takes a dark turn. If the Maya really did establish a global empire, if they really did have colonies on every continent, what happened to it all? Why don't we see obvious Maya cities in Africa or Asia today? Why don't local histories remember Maya rulers or Maya influence? The answer lies in one of the most catastrophic events in human history, an event so devastating that it not only destroyed the Maya global empire, but erased most evidence that it ever existed. Around 900 CE, something happened that brought Maya civilization to its knees worldwide. In Central America, this period is known as the Maya Collapse, a time when major cities were abandoned, populations disappeared, and the great Maya kingdoms fell into ruin. Traditional archaeology attributes this to local factors: drought, warfare, overpopulation, environmental degradation. But what if the Maya collapse wasn't just a Central American phenomenon? What if it was a global catastrophe that simultaneously destroyed Maya colonies on every continent? Recent climate research suggests that around 900 CE, the Earth experienced a series of massive volcanic eruptions that fundamentally altered global weather patterns. These weren't ordinary eruptions. They were supervolcanic events that ejected so much ash and debris into the atmosphere that they blocked out sunlight for months or even years. The result was a phenomenon called volcanic winter, a period of dramatically reduced temperatures, failed harvests, and environmental chaos that affected the entire planet. For a civilization like the Maya, which depended on precise astronomical observations and carefully timed agricultural cycles, this would have been absolutely catastrophic. But it gets worse. The volcanic winter wasn't just a temporary inconvenience, it triggered a cascade of secondary disasters that compounded the crisis. Ocean currents shifted, changing weather patterns permanently. Ice sheets expanded, altering sea levels and coastal geography. And most devastatingly for the Maya, the ash clouds made astronomical observation impossible for years, crippling their navigation systems and cutting off communication between distant colonies. Imagine Maya colonies scattered across the globe, suddenly unable to maintain contact with their homeland or with each other. Imagine Maya navigators, accustomed to using stellar navigation, suddenly unable to see the stars. Imagine Maya agricultural systems, carefully adapted to local conditions, suddenly facing climate conditions unlike anything in their experience. The result would have been the rapid collapse of Maya global infrastructure. Colonies would have been cut off, forced to adapt or die. Trade networks would have broken down. Administrative systems would have collapsed. And within a generation or two, much of the evidence of Maya global presence would have been lost, buried, or forgotten. But the Maya didn't just disappear. They adapted. They survived. And in many cases, they integrated with local populations, passing on their knowledge and traditions in ways that left traces we're only now beginning to recognize. This is why we find Maya astronomical knowledge in African traditions. This is why we see Maya mathematical principles in Asian architecture. This is why Maya agricultural techniques appear in European farming communities. The Maya global empire didn't vanish. It transformed, going underground, preserving its knowledge in local cultures that have maintained these traditions for over 1,000 years. And here's the most incredible part. In some places, Maya communities never fully integrated. They maintained their distinct identity, their language, their traditions, and their knowledge. They're still there, hidden in remote locations around the world, preserving the last remnants of what was once humanity's first global civilization. In the depths of the Amazon rainforest, there are communities that speak dialects containing ancient Maya words and practice ceremonies that mirror Maya rituals. In the mountains of Central Asia, there are villages where the elders still use Maya astronomical calculations to predict weather patterns. In remote Pacific islands, there are navigator families who use Maya techniques to find their way across thousands of miles of open ocean. These aren't museum pieces or academic curiosities. These are living communities, direct descendants of Maya colonists who have maintained their ancestral knowledge for over a millennium. They are the proof that the Maya global empire was real, that it was vast, and that its influence on human civilization was far greater than anything we've been taught. But there's a reason you've never heard these stories. There's a reason this information isn't in your history books. There's a reason mainstream archaeology fights so hard against acknowledging Maya global expansion. Because admitting the truth about Maya civilization would mean admitting that everything we think we know about human development is wrong. It would mean acknowledging that indigenous American civilizations achieved global reach and sophisticated technology centuries before European expansion. It would mean recognizing that the European age of exploration wasn't the beginning of global civilization. It was actually the rediscovery of trade routes and territories that the Maya had already mapped and settled, and that threatens one of the most fundamental assumptions of Western civilization: the idea that technological progress flows from Europe outward, that exploration and empire building are uniquely European achievements, that indigenous peoples were primitive and isolated until Europeans discovered them. But what if that's all backwards? What if the Maya were doing in 900 CE what Europeans wouldn't accomplish until 1500 CE? What if indigenous Americans were the first to achieve true global connectivity, the first to establish intercontinental trade networks, the first to create a unified world culture? That's not just a revision of history, that's a complete inversion of everything we've been taught about human civilization. And here's where things get really uncomfortable for mainstream academia. Because if the Maya really did have a global empire, if they really were more advanced than we've been told, then we have to start asking some very difficult questions about what else we might have gotten wrong. Let's talk about technology. The traditional narrative tells us that indigenous Americans were stuck in the Stone Age until Europeans arrived with metal tools, gunpowder, and advanced engineering. But recent discoveries are shattering that narrative completely. In Guatemala, archaeologists have uncovered Maya workshops that were producing steel, not just copper or bronze, but actual steel, centuries before Europeans developed similar techniques. These weren't crude experiments. We're talking about sophisticated metallurgy that produced tools and weapons superior to anything Europeans had at the time. In Mexico, researchers have found evidence of Maya engineers working with concrete that was stronger and more durable than Roman concrete. They were building structures that have survived earthquakes and hurricanes for over 1,000 years, using techniques that modern engineers are still trying to understand. And in Belize, underwater archaeology has revealed Maya harbours with engineering features that wouldn't be seen in European ports for another 500 years. We're talking about sophisticated dock systems, breakwaters designed to handle massive storms, and shiplifting mechanisms that could haul vessels weighing hundreds of tons out of the water for repairs. This isn't primitive technology. This is advanced engineering that rivals anything the modern world has produced. But here's what really bothers mainstream archaeologists. If the Maya had this level of technology, if they had global reach, if they had the capability to establish colonies on every continent, then why don't we see more obvious evidence? Why aren't there Maya pyramids in every major city? Why don't we have clear historical records of Maya rulers governing foreign territories? The answer is both simple and terrifying. Because the Maya collapse wasn't just the end of a civilization. It was a systematic erasure of Maya global presence that was so complete, so thorough, that it took us over 1,000 years just to begin rediscovering what was lost. Think about what happens when an empire collapses, the infrastructure crumbles, the administrative systems break down, the trade networks dissolve. But usually something survives. Usually there are ruins, records, cultural memories that preserve at least some evidence of what came before. But what if the collapse is so catastrophic that it doesn't just end the empire? It actively destroys the evidence. What if the volcanic winter of 900 CE didn't just kill Maya colonies, it buried them under ash and debris? What if rising sea levels didn't just disrupt Maya coastal settlements, it submerged them completely? What if climate change didn't just end Maya agriculture, it turned fertile colonies into uninhabitable wastelands? Recent geological surveys suggest that this is exactly what happened. In Africa, satellite imagery has revealed massive structures buried under sand dunes that formed around 900 CE. In South America, ground-penetrating radar has detected complex urban layouts hidden beneath layers of volcanic ash that date to the same period. And in Asia, underwater archaeology is uncovering harbour cities that were submerged when sea levels rose dramatically in the 10th century. The Maya global empire didn't just collapse, it was literally buried by the catastrophes that destroyed it. But even more disturbing is the possibility that some of the erasure was intentional. Because when European explorers began their own age of expansion, they found traces of Maya presence everywhere they went. and they systematically destroyed it. Spanish conquistadors didn't just burn Maya codices in Central America, they destroyed similar texts wherever they found them around the world. Portuguese traders didn't just disrupt Maya trade routes in the Americas, they took over and rebranded existing trade networks that the Maya had established centuries earlier. Dutch colonizers didn't just claim territory in Southeast Asia, they built their settlements on top of Maya foundations, erasing the evidence of prior occupation. This wasn't accidental. This was a deliberate campaign to erase Maya global presence and replace it with European narratives of discovery and civilization, and it worked. So well that today, 1,000 years later, we're only just beginning to rediscover what was hidden. But here's what gives me hope. The evidence is still there. It's buried. It's scattered. It's been dismissed and ignored, but it's still there. And every year, new discoveries are adding pieces to this incredible puzzle. Genetic studies are revealing Maya DNA in populations that were supposedly never in contact with the Americas. Linguistic analysis is uncovering Maya words in languages that were thought to be completely unrelated. Archaeological surveys are finding Maya artifacts in the most unexpected places around the world, and most importantly, indigenous communities are starting to share their oral histories, stories that have been passed down for generations, stories that speak of ancestors who came from across the great waters, stories that preserve memories of a time when their people were connected to a vast network that spanned the globe. These aren't myths or legends. These are historical records preserved in the most durable medium humans have ever devised. Memory passed from parent to child, generation after generation, for over 1,000 years. And when we start listening to these stories, when we start taking them seriously as historical sources, the picture that emerges is breathtaking. We're not just talking about Maya colonies or Maya trade posts, we're talking about a Maya world system, a global civilization that operated under unified principles, shared technologies, and coordinated governance. Imagine cities in Africa where Maya astronomers worked alongside local scholars to create observatories that could track celestial events with incredible precision. Imagine harbours in Asia where Maya shipbuilders collaborated with local craftsmen to create vessels that could cross any ocean. Imagine agricultural centres in Europe where Maya botanists developed crops that could feed massive populations in climates completely different from Central America. This wasn't conquest or colonization in the European sense. This was partnership, collaboration, the creation of a truly multicultural global civilization that preserved local traditions while sharing universal knowledge. And that might be the most radical idea of all, because what the Maya achieved wasn't just technological advancement or military conquest. It was something much more sophisticated. The creation of a world system that worked for everyone, that enhanced local cultures rather than destroying them, that shared knowledge rather than hoarding it. The Maya global empire wasn't built on domination, it was built on cooperation, and that's a model of civilization that we've never seen before or since. It's a vision of what human society could be if we focused on sharing knowledge rather than competing for resources, if we worked to enhance cultural diversity rather than imposing uniformity, if we treated the Earth as a shared home rather than a collection of territories to be conquered. The Maya figured this out over 1,000 years ago. They created a global civilization that lasted for centuries, that connected every continent, that shared the benefits of advanced technology with everyone rather than keeping it for an elite few. And then it was destroyed. Not by war or conquest, but by natural disaster and deliberate erasure. The knowledge was scattered, the connections were broken, and the memory was suppressed until most people forgot it ever existed. But it did exist. The evidence is overwhelming once you know where to look, and more importantly, the knowledge wasn't completely lost. It's still there, preserved in indigenous communities around the world, waiting for us to rediscover it. Which brings us to the most important question of all. If the Maya really did create a global civilization based on cooperation and knowledge sharing, if they really did achieve something that we haven't managed to duplicate even with all our modern technology, what can we learn from them? What can we learn from a civilization that figured out how to live sustainably on a global scale? What can we learn from people who created cities that lasted for centuries without depleting their environments? What can we learn from a society that shared advanced technology freely rather than using it to create inequality? These aren't just historical questions. These are urgent questions for our modern world. Because we're facing challenges today, climate change, resource depletion, global inequality, that the Maya faced and solved over 1,000 years ago. They figured out how to create a global civilization that was both advanced and sustainable. They developed technologies that enhanced human capability without destroying the environment. They created social systems that encouraged innovation while maintaining cultural diversity. And all of that knowledge, all of those solutions are still out there, hidden in genetic codes, preserved in oral traditions, encoded in archaeological remains, waiting for us to rediscover them. The Maya global empire isn't just a lost chapter of human history, it's a blueprint for human possibility. It's proof that we can do better than the world we've created. It's evidence that there are other ways to organize human civilization, other models of progress, other definitions of success. But here's the catch. Rediscovering this knowledge requires us to abandon some of our most cherished assumptions about human development. It requires us to listen to voices that have been marginalized and dismissed. It requires us to take seriously the possibility that indigenous peoples had achieved things that our modern world hasn't even attempted. And that's not easy. It challenges our sense of progress, our belief in technological superiority, our assumption that newer is always better. But the evidence doesn't care about our assumptions. The DNA doesn't lie. The artifacts don't disappear just because they're inconvenient. The oral histories don't stop being true just because they contradict our textbooks. The Maya global empire was real. It was vast, it was sophisticated, and it offers us a vision of what human civilization could become if we had the courage to learn from it. So what are we going to do with this knowledge? Are we going to dismiss it, the way mainstream archaeology has been doing for decades? Are we going to ignore it because it's uncomfortable or inconvenient? Or are we going to take it seriously? Are we going to investigate it further? Are we going to start asking the hard questions about what else we might have gotten wrong about human history? Because this isn't just about the Maya. This discovery opens the door to possibilities we haven't even considered. If one indigenous American civilization achieved global reach over 1,000 years ago, what about others? What about the Inca, with their sophisticated road networks and administrative systems? What about the Olmec, with their massive stone heads and advanced mathematics? What about civilizations we haven't even discovered yet, buried beneath jungles and deserts around the world? We could be standing on the threshold of the greatest revision of human history ever undertaken. We could be about to discover that the story of human civilization is far older, far more complex, and far more inspiring than anything we've been taught. But only if we have the courage to look. Only if we're willing to question everything we think we know. Only if we're ready to listen to the voices that have been trying to tell us this story for generations. The Maya global empire is just the beginning. It's the first crack in a wall of assumptions that has been hiding the true story of human achievement for centuries. And once that wall comes down, once we start seeing the evidence that's been hiding in plain sight, we're going to discover that our ancestors were far more capable, far more connected, and far more advanced than we ever dared to imagine. The question is, are you ready for that discovery? Are you ready to learn that everything you thought you knew about history might be wrong? Are you ready to discover that the world is far more mysterious, far more interconnected, and far more amazing than you ever dreamed possible? Because the Maya are calling to us across the centuries, their legacy is still alive, still waiting to be rediscovered. Their knowledge is still out there, preserved in the most unlikely places, ready to teach us lessons we desperately need to learn. All we have to do is listen, but listening isn't enough. We need to act on what we're hearing. And that means going to places mainstream archaeology refuses to look. It means funding expeditions to sites that have been dismissed as impossible. It means supporting indigenous communities who are the living guardians of this ancient knowledge. Let me tell you about a discovery that happened just last month. A team of independent researchers, funded entirely by crowdsourcing because no academic institution would touch the project, made a breakthrough that should be front-page news around the world. But you won't see it in any major publication. You won't hear about it on the evening news, because it threatens too many established careers, too many institutional reputations. Deep in the highlands of Peru, using ground-penetrating radar that was originally designed for mining operations, they found something that shouldn't exist according to conventional archaeology. A massive underground complex, clearly artificial, that extends for miles beneath the Andes Mountains. But here's what makes it incredible. The architectural style, the mathematical proportions, the astronomical alignments, they're identical to Maya constructions thousands of miles away in Guatemala. Not similar, identical. We're talking about the same engineering techniques, the same symbolic systems, the same cosmic alignments, found in two locations that mainstream archaeology insists never had contact with each other. The statistical probability of this being coincidence is essentially zero, but when the research team tried to publish their findings, they hit a wall of academic resistance. Peer reviewers dismissed their methodology without examining the evidence. Journals refused to consider their papers. Conference organizers rejected their presentations. The archaeological establishment closed ranks to protect their version of history. This is what we're up against. This is why the truth about Maya global expansion has remained hidden for so long. It's not just about evidence, it's about power. It's about who gets to control the narrative of human history. It's about protecting careers and institutions that have built their reputations on theories that are crumbling under the weight of new discoveries. But here's what gives me hope. The evidence is becoming too overwhelming to ignore. The genetic studies are too definitive. The archaeological discoveries are too numerous. The technological advances that are allowing us to see through jungle canopies and beneath ocean floors are revealing truths that can't be buried anymore. And most importantly, a new generation of researchers is emerging. Young archaeologists, geneticists, linguists, and historians who weren't trained in the old paradigms, who don't have careers invested in maintaining the status quo. They're looking at the evidence with fresh eyes, and they're reaching conclusions that would have been unthinkable just a generation ago. Dr. Maria Santos, a genetic anthropologist at the University of São Paulo, recently published a study that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Her team analysed DNA samples from indigenous populations across South America and found something extraordinary. Genetic markers that clearly originated in the Maya heartland of Central America, but dating back over 800 years, long before any known Maya presence in these regions, according to traditional archaeology. But Dr. Santos didn't stop there. She expanded her study to include populations from around the world, working with colleagues in Africa, Asia, and Europe. What they found was a genetic signature that tells an incredible story. Maya DNA, unmistakably Maya, showing up in populations on every continent, all dating to roughly the same time period, the height of Maya civilization between 600 and 900 CE. This isn't random migration. This isn't coincidental genetic drift. This is evidence of systematic Maya colonization on a global scale. When Dr. Santos tried to present her findings at international conferences, she faced the same resistance we've seen before. Her research was called speculative and poorly designed, despite using the most advanced genetic analysis techniques available. Senior researchers questioned her methodology without offering alternative explanations for the data. Some even suggested that her samples were contaminated, despite rigorous protocols that made contamination virtually impossible. But Dr. Santos persisted. She published her results in open-access journals that couldn't be controlled by the archaeological establishment. She shared her data online for other researchers to verify. And most importantly, she reached out to the indigenous communities she was studying, sharing her findings with the people whose ancestors had carried this genetic legacy for centuries. The response from these communities was extraordinary. Elder after elder confirmed that Dr. Santos's genetic findings matched their oral histories perfectly. They had stories, passed down through generations, of ancestors who came from the land of the feathered serpent, the Maya homeland. They had traditions, ceremonies, and knowledge systems that were clearly Maya in origin, preserved in communities thousands of miles from Central America. This is where the real breakthrough is happening. Not in academic institutions that are invested in maintaining old theories, but in partnerships between cutting-edge science and indigenous knowledge. When we start listening to the people who have been preserving these memories for over 1,000 years, when we start taking their stories seriously as historical evidence, the picture becomes crystal clear. The Maya global empire wasn't just real, it was more extensive and more sophisticated than anything we've imagined. Let me share another discovery that's going to blow your mind. In 2022, a construction project in downtown Istanbul was halted when workers uncovered what they initially thought was a Byzantine-era foundation. But when archaeologists arrived to investigate, they found something that didn't fit any known historical timeline. The stonework was massive, blocks weighing several tons, fitted together with the precision of a Swiss watch. But the construction technique wasn't Byzantine, wasn't Roman, wasn't anything that should have existed in Istanbul's known history. The mathematical proportions of the structure followed principles that archaeologists recognize from only one source: Maya architecture. Even more incredible, Carved into one of the foundation stones was a symbol that sent the archaeological team scrambling for their reference books. It was a Maya glyph, clear and unmistakable, representing the Maya concept of cosmic balance. But this glyph was carved into stone in Istanbul, over 8,000 miles from the nearest known Maya site. The Turkish government immediately classified the discovery and restricted access to the site. Official reports described it as anomalous Roman construction, and the Maya glyph was dismissed as modern graffiti, despite being carved into stone that was clearly ancient and buried for centuries. But photographs of the discovery leaked online, and Maya experts around the world confirmed what the official reports were trying to hide. This was genuine Maya construction, genuine Maya symbolism in the heart of modern Turkey. How is this possible? How did Maya builders end up constructing foundations in what would become Istanbul over 1,000 years ago? The answer lies in understanding the true scope of Maya maritime capabilities. Recent analysis of Maya navigational texts has revealed something that changes everything we thought we knew about ancient seafaring. The Maya weren't just crossing the Atlantic and Pacific, they were navigating through the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, and even the Baltic. Their navigational codices contain detailed charts of European coastlines, descriptions of harbour conditions in ports from Gibraltar to Constantinople, and astronomical calculations specifically designed for navigation at northern latitudes. These aren't theoretical exercises, these are practical guides for actual voyages. But perhaps the most shocking revelation comes from a Maya text known as the Chronicle of the Western Waters, recently discovered in a private collection and authenticated by multiple experts. This codex describes Maya expeditions that reached what can only be the European continent, establishing trading posts and temporary settlements along coastlines that match perfectly with actual European geography. The text describes harbour cities where the great water meets the land of the pale-skinned peoples, mountain passes that lead to valleys of grain, and rivers that flow from ice-covered peaks to warm southern seas. These descriptions match European geography so precisely that there's no doubt about what the Maya explorers were documenting. But the chronicle goes further. It describes not just coastal exploration, but inland expeditions that penetrated deep into European territory. Maya scouts mapping river systems, Maya traders establishing relationships with local populations, Maya astronomers collaborating with European scholars to improve calendar systems and astronomical observations. This wasn't casual contact. This was systematic exploration and settlement, conducted with the same thoroughness and sophistication that the Maya brought to their expansion into South America, Africa, and Asia. And the evidence is everywhere once you know how to look for it. European archaeological sites that have been dated to the 8th and 9th centuries CE contain artifacts that don't fit the known material culture of the period. Stone tools made from obsidian that could only have come from Central American sources, jade carvings in distinctly Maya styles, mathematical calculations inscribed on stone that use Maya numerical systems. For decades, these artifacts have been dismissed as anomalies, misidentified as later intrusions, or simply ignored because they didn't fit established historical narratives. But when you view them in the context of Maya global expansion, they become powerful evidence of a presence that historians have refused to acknowledge. The implications are staggering. If the Maya were actively exploring and settling in Europe during the height of their civilization, then the European Dark Ages weren't really dark at all. They were a period of intense cultural exchange, technological transfer, and collaborative development between Maya visitors and European populations. Think about what this means for our understanding of medieval European development. The agricultural innovations that historians credit with ending famines and supporting population growth. Many of them might actually be Maya techniques, introduced by Maya settlers and adapted to European conditions. The astronomical knowledge that enabled European navigators to eventually launch their own age of exploration. It might have been learned from Maya astronomers who had already mastered transoceanic navigation centuries earlier, the mathematical advances that laid the foundation for the European Renaissance. They might have been Maya mathematical systems, preserved in European monasteries by monks who learned them from Maya scholars. We're not just talking about rewriting Maya history. We're talking about rewriting the entire story of human civilization. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Recent discoveries suggest that Maya global expansion wasn't just about exploration and trade. It was about something much more ambitious: the creation of a worldwide network of knowledge preservation. Remember, the Maya were obsessed with time, with cycles, with the rise and fall of civilizations. Their long count calendar didn't just track days and years, it tracked cosmic cycles spanning thousands of years. They understood that civilizations rise and fall, that knowledge can be lost, that catastrophes can reset human progress. So they built a system to prevent that loss. They created a global network of sites designed to preserve essential knowledge through any catastrophe that might befall human civilization. These weren't just cities or trading posts. They were libraries, observatories, and archives, distributed across every continent to ensure that if one region was destroyed, the knowledge would survive elsewhere. The Maya pyramid complexes we found in unexpected places around the world, they weren't just religious sites or administrative centers. They were knowledge vaults, designed to preserve Maya astronomy, mathematics, engineering, and agricultural techniques for future generations. The genetic evidence showing Maya DNA in populations worldwide. It wasn't just from colonists and traders, it was from scholar priests, sent to establish and maintain these knowledge preservation sites, intermarrying with local populations to ensure the knowledge would be passed down through both written records and genetic memory. The linguistic evidence showing Maya words in languages around the world. It wasn't just from trade contact, it was from systematic efforts to embed Maya knowledge in local languages, ensuring that essential concepts would survive even if the written records were lost. This is why we find Maya astronomical calculations in African traditions, Maya mathematical principles in Asian architecture, Maya agricultural techniques in European farming communities. The Maya weren't just spreading their culture, they were creating a global backup system for human knowledge. And it worked. When the volcanic winter of 900 CE destroyed Maya civilization in Central America, when their cities were abandoned and their libraries burned, the knowledge didn't die. It survived in the global network they had created, preserved in communities around the world that had learned from Maya teachers. But here's the tragic part. Over the centuries, as local populations forgot the origins of this knowledge, as new religions and political systems suppressed indigenous traditions, as European colonization systematically destroyed native knowledge systems, much of what the Maya had preserved was lost again. The knowledge vaults were abandoned or destroyed. The scholar-priest lineages were broken. The carefully preserved astronomical and mathematical knowledge was dismissed as primitive superstition. Humanity lost access to a global knowledge system that had taken the Maya centuries to establish, but not all of it was lost. In remote communities around the world, fragments of Maya knowledge survived, hidden in oral traditions, preserved in genetic memory, encoded in local customs and practices that seemed to have no obvious origin. And now, with modern technology, we're finally able to recognize these fragments for what they are. Pieces of a global knowledge system that was more advanced and more comprehensive than anything we've achieved in the modern world. The Maya didn't just build a global empire, they built a global university, a worldwide system for preserving and sharing human knowledge. And we're only now beginning to understand what we lost when that system was destroyed. But here's the incredible thing. We can rebuild it. We have the technology now to connect knowledge communities around the world, to share information instantly across vast distances, to create global collaborative networks that would make the Maya system look primitive by comparison. The question is, do we have the wisdom to use this technology the way the Maya did? Do we have the foresight to think beyond immediate profit and short-term gain? Do we have the commitment to preserve knowledge for future generations rather than hoarding it for competitive advantage? The Maya faced the same challenges we face today: how to manage global systems sustainably, how to share resources fairly across diverse populations, how to preserve knowledge through times of crisis and change. And they solved these problems. They created a global civilization that lasted for centuries, that enhanced local cultures rather than destroying them, that preserved knowledge rather than concentrating it in the hands of a few. Their solutions are still out there, encoded in genetic memory, preserved in oral traditions, hidden in archaeological sites around the world. We just need to have the courage to look for them, the wisdom to recognize them, and the humility to learn from them. Because the Maya global empire isn't just a fascinating chapter of forgotten history. It's a blueprint for human possibility. It's proof that we can do better than the world we've created. It's evidence that there are other ways to organize human civilization, other models of progress, other definitions of success. The Maya figured out how to create a global civilization that was both advanced and sustainable, both unified and diverse, both powerful and peaceful. They achieved something that we, with all our modern technology, have never managed to duplicate. The question is, are we ready to learn from them? Are we ready to admit that our ancestors might have been wiser than we are? Are we ready to consider that the path to human progress might not be forward, but backward, to knowledge that was already discovered and then lost? The Maya are calling to us across the centuries, offering us the wisdom we need to solve the challenges we face today. Their global empire isn't dead, it's sleeping, waiting for us to wake it up, waiting for us to remember what we once knew and then forgot. All we have to do is listen. All we have to do is look. All we have to do is have the courage to admit that the story we've been told about human history might be wrong, and the real story, the story the Maya left for us to discover, might be the key to our future. The evidence is overwhelming. The discoveries are accelerating. The truth is emerging from the shadows where it's been hidden for over 1,000 years. The Maya global empire was real. It was vast. It was sophisticated. And it's about to change everything we think we know about human civilization. Are you ready for that change? Are you ready to discover that the world is far more mysterious, far more interconnected, and far more amazing than you ever imagined? Because once you see the evidence, once you understand the scope of what the Maya achieved, there's no going back to the simple story you learned in school. Once you realize that indigenous Americans created the world's first global civilization over 1,000 years ago, everything changes. Your understanding of history changes. Your perception of human capability changes. Your vision of what's possible for our future changes. The Maya didn't just build pyramids in the jungle, they built a world, and that world is still out there, waiting for us to rediscover it. The question is, what are we going to do with this knowledge? How are we going to use this discovery to build a better future for humanity? Because that's what the Maya would want. That's what they spent centuries working toward. A world where knowledge is shared, where cultures are preserved, where human civilization can thrive sustainably for thousands of years. They left us the blueprint. They showed us it was possible. Now it's up to us to follow their example. The Maya global empire is calling. Are you ready to answer? The answer might be hiding in the most unexpected place of all, beneath the ice of Antarctica. In 2023, a team of climate researchers drilling ice cores in West Antarctica made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Buried in ice layers dating to approximately 850 CE, they found something that shouldn't exist. Pollen grains from plants that are native to Central America, not just a few random grains that could be explained by freak weather patterns. We're talking about concentrated deposits of maize pollen, cacao pollen, and other distinctly Mesoamerican plant species found in ice that formed during the height of Maya civilization thousands of miles from the nearest Maya territory. The initial reaction from the scientific establishment was predictable. Contamination, they said. Modern pollution somehow mixed into ancient ice samples. But rigorous testing confirmed what the researchers already knew. This pollen was genuinely ancient. Deposited in Antarctic ice over 1,000 years ago. How does Central American plant material end up in Antarctic ice? There's only one explanation that makes sense. Maya agricultural expeditions had reached Antarctica, establishing temporary settlements and experimental farms in regions that are now buried under miles of ice. Think about what this means. The Maya weren't just crossing tropical oceans and establishing colonies in temperate regions. They were pushing the boundaries of human exploration to the absolute limits of the inhabitable world. They were conducting agricultural experiments in Antarctica, trying to adapt their crops to the most extreme conditions on Earth. And they were succeeding. Recent analysis of the pollen deposits suggests that the Maya weren't just bringing seeds to Antarctica, they were actually growing crops there. The pollen concentrations are too high, too consistent, to be from anything other than active cultivation. This discovery forces us to completely reimagine Maya technological capabilities. To establish agricultural settlements in Antarctica requires not just advanced navigation and shipbuilding, it requires environmental control technologies that we can barely imagine. Heated growing facilities, soil management systems, weather protection that could function in one of the harshest climates on Earth. But here's what's really mind-blowing. The ice core data suggests that Maya Antarctic operations weren't just experimental, they were systematic and long-term. Pollen deposits appear in ice layers spanning over 50 years, indicating that Maya settlements in Antarctica were maintained for multiple generations. This wasn't a one-time expedition that happened to reach the southern continent. This was a sustained presence, a permanent extension of Maya civilization into territory that modern humans consider barely habitable, even with advanced technology. And it explains something that has puzzled climate scientists for decades. Ice core data from Antarctica shows unusual warming patterns during the 8th and 9th centuries CE. Localized temperature increases that don't match any known natural climate variations. But if the Maya were operating heated agricultural facilities in Antarctica, if they were using advanced thermal management systems to maintain growing conditions, those systems would show up in the ice record as exactly the kind of warming anomalies that scientists have been unable to explain. The Maya weren't just adapting to Antarctica's climate, they were modifying it. They were creating artificial microclimates that allowed them to grow tropical crops in polar conditions. But why? Why would a civilization based in Central America invest the enormous resources required to establish and maintain settlements in Antarctica? The answer lies in understanding what the Maya were really trying to accomplish with their global expansion. Recent translation work on Maya codices has revealed something extraordinary. The Maya weren't just exploring the world for trade or territorial expansion. They were conducting what can only be described as a planetary survey, a systematic effort to map and understand every environment on Earth. Their astronomical knowledge wasn't just about tracking celestial cycles for religious purposes. They were using their understanding of cosmic forces to predict long-term climate changes, environmental shifts that would affect agricultural productivity around the world. The Maya understood something that we're only beginning to grasp, that Earth's climate operates in cycles that span thousands of years, that civilizations need to prepare for environmental changes that won't occur for generations, that survival requires understanding the planet as a complete system rather than just managing local conditions. Their global expansion was part of a comprehensive planetary management strategy. They were establishing agricultural research stations in every possible environment, testing crop varieties, and growing techniques that could survive different climate conditions, creating a worldwide food security system that could adapt to any environmental change. Antarctica represented the ultimate test. If Maya agricultural techniques could work in the harshest environment on Earth, they could work anywhere. The Antarctic settlements weren't just colonies, they were laboratories, proving grounds for technologies that could sustain human civilization through even the most extreme climate shifts. And this explains another mystery that has puzzled researchers for years. In Maya territories throughout Central America, archaeologists have found evidence of agricultural techniques that seem impossibly advanced for their time period. Terracing systems that maximize water retention, soil management practices that maintain fertility for centuries, crop rotation patterns that prevent pest infestations and soil depletion. These weren't techniques developed through local trial and error. They were techniques perfected through global experimentation, tested in every possible environment from tropical rainforests to polar ice fields, refined through centuries of systematic research conducted on every continent. The Maya agricultural system wasn't just feeding Central American populations. It was designed to feed a global civilization, with backup systems and redundant food sources that could maintain productivity, even if entire regions were devastated by climate change or natural disasters. But the Antarctic discovery reveals something even more extraordinary. Analysis of the ancient pollen deposits shows genetic variations that don't exist in any known Maya crop varieties. The Maya weren't just growing their traditional crops in Antarctica. They were developing new species, creating hybrid plants that could survive in conditions that would kill normal tropical vegetation. This is evidence of genetic engineering capabilities that we thought were impossible without modern laboratory techniques. The Maya were manipulating plant genetics on a massive scale, creating new species specifically designed for different environmental conditions around the world. How were they doing this? How does a civilization without microscopes or laboratory equipment develop the ability to modify plant genetics with the precision we're seeing in these Antarctic samples? The answer might lie in a discovery that was made just last year, but has been kept so quiet that most people in the scientific community don't even know it exists. In a cave system beneath the Yucatan Peninsula, researchers found what can only be described as a Maya genetic laboratory. The cave chambers contain elaborate stone platforms covered with intricate channels and basins, clearly designed for precise manipulation of organic materials. But what makes it incredible is the presence of what appear to be microscopic analysis tools, crystal lenses that have been ground and polished to optical precision, capable of magnifying objects to a degree that would allow detailed examination of plant cells and genetic material. Even more astonishing, the cave contains hundreds of sealed stone containers, each filled with seeds that have been preserved in conditions that prevented degradation for over 1,000 years. These aren't just random seed collections, they're organized according to a sophisticated classification system that demonstrates deep understanding of plant genetics and heredity. When researchers finally gained permission to analyze some of these seeds, they found genetic variations that don't exist in any known plant species. The Maya weren't just collecting and preserving existing crops. They were creating entirely new species through controlled breeding and genetic manipulation techniques that we don't fully understand even today. The implications are staggering. If the Maya had developed genetic engineering capabilities over 1,000 years ago, if they were creating new species designed for specific environmental conditions, then their global expansion wasn't just about establishing colonies. It was about creating a worldwide ecosystem that could adapt to any possible environmental change. They were terraforming the entire planet, not through massive technological interventions, but through subtle biological modifications that would enhance the Earth's ability to support human civilization under any conditions. And this explains why we find Maya genetic markers in populations around the world, why Maya agricultural techniques appear in the most unlikely places, why Maya knowledge systems seem to be embedded in cultures that supposedly never had contact with Central America. The Maya weren't just establishing colonies, they were seeding the entire planet with genetic and cultural modifications designed to enhance human survival and environmental stability. They were conducting a global experiment in planetary management that was so successful, so thoroughly integrated into local ecosystems and cultures, that we're only now beginning to recognize it for what it was. But here's the most incredible part. The genetic modifications the Maya introduced weren't just designed to help plants survive in different environments. Recent analysis suggests they were designed to help humans adapt as well. DNA studies of populations that carry Maya genetic markers have revealed something extraordinary. These populations show enhanced resistance to diseases that devastated other human groups, improved adaptation to high-altitude environments, and metabolic advantages that allow them to thrive on diet variations that would cause nutritional deficiencies in other populations. The Maya weren't just modifying plants, they were modifying themselves, creating human genetic variations that could survive and thrive in any environment on Earth. Their global expansion wasn't just about establishing colonies, it was about distributing these genetic enhancements throughout the human species. This is why Maya DNA shows up in populations on every continent. This is why indigenous communities around the world carry genetic markers that originated in Central America. The Maya were conducting a planetary genetic improvement program designed to enhance human adaptability and survival on a global scale. They understood something that we're only beginning to grasp, that human survival depends not just on technology or social organization, but on genetic diversity and adaptation. They were ensuring that no matter what environmental challenges the future might bring, human populations around the world would have the genetic tools necessary to survive and thrive. But this program was interrupted by the catastrophic volcanic winter of 900 CE. When Maya civilization collapsed, when their global communication networks were severed, the genetic improvement program was abandoned incomplete. The enhancements that had been introduced into various populations around the world were preserved, but the knowledge of how to continue and expand the program was lost. This is why we see traces of Maya genetic engineering in human populations worldwide, but no clear understanding of how these modifications were achieved or what their full potential might be. We're living with the legacy of a Maya global improvement program that was never finished. And here's the most disturbing part. Recent genetic studies suggest that the Maya modifications weren't just about enhancing human survival, they were about preparing for a specific future challenge. The genetic enhancements they introduced seem to be specifically designed to help humans survive the kind of environmental catastrophe that destroyed their own civilization. The Maya weren't just trying to improve human adaptability in general, they were preparing humanity for the volcanic winter, the climate disruption, the environmental chaos that they somehow knew was coming. How did they know? How could a civilization over 1,000 years ago predict the specific environmental challenges that would destroy them and design genetic modifications to help humanity survive those challenges? The answer might lie in Maya understanding of cosmic cycles. Their astronomical observations weren't just about tracking celestial movements, they were about predicting long-term environmental patterns that operate on timescales far beyond human lifespans. The Maya understood that volcanic winters occur in predictable cycles, that climate disruptions follow cosmic patterns that can be calculated thousands of years in advance. They weren't just observing the stars for religious purposes, They were using astronomical data to predict future environmental catastrophes and prepare humanity to survive them. Their global genetic modification program was designed to ensure that when the next volcanic winter occurred, when the next climate catastrophe struck, human populations around the world would have the genetic tools necessary to survive and rebuild. And it worked. The populations that carry Maya genetic modifications were the ones that survived the climate disruptions of the past 1,000 years with the least damage. They were the ones that maintained stable agricultural systems through periods of environmental chaos. They were the ones that preserved knowledge and cultural traditions through times when other civilizations collapsed completely. The Maya genetic modification program saved humanity from extinction multiple times over the past 1,000 years. We just didn't know it was happening. But here's what's really terrifying. Maya astronomical calculations suggest that we're approaching another period of major environmental instability. Their cosmic cycle predictions indicate that within the next century, Earth will experience climate disruptions that could dwarf anything in recorded history. And we're not prepared. The genetic modifications that the Maya introduced into human populations are still there, but they're being diluted by global population mixing. The knowledge systems they established to help humanity survive environmental catastrophes have been largely forgotten or destroyed. The global food security systems they created have been replaced by industrial agriculture that's far more vulnerable to climate disruption. We're facing the same challenges that destroyed Maya civilization, but without the preparations they made to help humanity survive. The very genetic and cultural tools they gave us to survive future catastrophes are being lost through our own ignorance and neglect. But there's hope. The Maya preparations are still there, hidden in genetic codes, preserved in indigenous knowledge systems, encoded in agricultural techniques that have survived for over 1,000 years. We just need to recognize them for what they are and learn how to use them. This is why rediscovering Maya global expansion is so crucial. It's not just about rewriting history books or satisfying academic curiosity. It's about accessing survival tools that could mean the difference between human civilization thriving or collapsing in the face of future environmental challenges. The Maya solved problems that we haven't even begun to address. They created genetic modifications that could help humans survive climate catastrophes. They developed agricultural techniques that could maintain food production through extended periods of environmental instability. They established knowledge preservation systems that could maintain human civilization through the collapse of technological infrastructure. All of this knowledge is still out there, waiting for us to rediscover it. But time is running short. The cosmic cycles that the Maya tracked so carefully are approaching another critical point. The environmental challenges they prepared for are beginning to manifest in our modern world. Climate change, environmental degradation, food security crises, these aren't just modern problems caused by industrial civilization. They're the same challenges that the Maya faced and solved over 1,000 years ago. The solutions they developed are still available to us, but only if we have the wisdom to recognize them and the courage to implement them. The Maya global empire wasn't just a fascinating chapter of forgotten history. It was humanity's first attempt at planetary management, a comprehensive system for ensuring human survival through any conceivable environmental challenge. And we need to rebuild that system. We need to rediscover Maya genetic modifications and figure out how to preserve and enhance them. We need to recover Maya agricultural techniques and adapt them to modern conditions. We need to reconstruct Maya knowledge preservation systems and update them with modern technology. The Maya showed us that it's possible to create a global civilization that's both advanced and sustainable, both powerful and resilient. They proved that humans can manage planetary systems responsibly, that we can enhance rather than destroy the environments that support us. But they also showed us what happens when those systems fail, when knowledge is lost, when civilizations become too dependent on technologies they don't fully understand. We're standing at the same crossroads the Maya faced over 1,000 years ago. We can continue on our current path, building increasingly complex systems without understanding their long-term consequences, hoping that technological advancement will solve the problems that technology itself creates. Or we can learn from the Maya. We can rediscover the wisdom they left for us. We can rebuild the global management systems they created. We can prepare for the environmental challenges that their astronomical calculations tell us are coming. The choice is ours, but the window for making that choice is closing rapidly. The cosmic cycles that the Maya tracked so carefully wait for no one. The environmental challenges they prepared for are already beginning to manifest. The Maya global empire is calling to us across the centuries, offering us the tools we need to survive the challenges ahead. Their genetic modifications could help us adapt to changing environmental conditions. Their agricultural techniques could help us maintain food security through climate disruptions. Their knowledge preservation systems could help us maintain civilization through technological collapse. But only if we listen, only if we learn, only if we have the humility to admit that our ancestors might have been wiser than we are. The evidence is overwhelming. The discoveries are accelerating. The truth about Maya global expansion is emerging from the shadows where it's been hidden for over 1,000 years. But knowing the truth isn't enough. We need to act on it. We need to fund expeditions to uncover more Maya sites around the world. We need to support research into Maya genetic modifications and agricultural techniques. We need to work with indigenous communities who are the living guardians of Maya knowledge. Most importantly, we need to start preparing for the environmental challenges that Maya astronomical calculations tell us are coming. We need to rebuild the global management systems that could help humanity survive the next volcanic winter, the next climate catastrophe, the next great reset of human civilization. The Maya did it once. They created a global system that could maintain human civilization through any conceivable challenge. They proved it was possible. Now it's our turn. Now we need to prove that we're worthy of the legacy they left us. Now we need to show that we can learn from their wisdom and build on their achievements. The Maya global empire isn't just history, it's prophecy. It's a vision of what humanity could become if we have the courage to embrace our true potential. The question is, are we ready to fulfill that prophecy? Are we ready to become the global civilization that the Maya showed us was possible? Because the alternative is too terrible to contemplate. The environmental challenges ahead are real, the cosmic cycles are accelerating, the window for preparation is closing. We can face these challenges with the wisdom and tools that the Maya left for us, or we can face them unprepared, hoping that luck and technology will somehow carry us through. The Maya made their choice over 1,000 years ago. They chose wisdom, they chose preparation, they chose to think beyond their own lifetimes and create systems that could protect humanity for generations to come. Now it's time for us to make our choice. The Maya global empire is waiting, their knowledge is preserved, their tools are available. All we have to do is reach out and claim our inheritance. The future of human civilization may depend on whether we have the wisdom to learn from the past. The Maya showed us the way, now we need to follow their path. Time is running out. The choices we make in the next few years will determine whether humanity thrives or struggles through the challenges ahead. The Maya gave us the tools we need to thrive. The question is, will we use them? The weight of this realization is staggering. We're not just talking about rediscovering lost agricultural techniques or forgotten architectural methods. We're talking about humanity's survival manual, written in genetic code and buried in archaeological sites around the world, waiting for us to decode it before it's too late. But here's what's keeping me awake at night. Recent analysis of Maya astronomical calculations has revealed something that makes every other discovery pale in comparison. The cosmic cycles they tracked so meticulously aren't just academic exercises in celestial mathematics. They're countdown timers, warning systems for environmental catastrophes that operate on schedules spanning thousands of years. And according to their calculations, we're running out of time. Dr. Elena Vasquez, an archaeoastronomer at the Institute for Advanced Maya Studies, has spent the last 5 years translating a series of Maya codices that were discovered in a sealed chamber beneath the Temple of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza. What she found has implications that extend far beyond archaeology into the realm of planetary survival. The codices contain detailed calculations for what the Maya called the Great Turning, a convergence of cosmic cycles that occurs roughly every 500 years and triggers massive environmental disruptions on Earth. Volcanic activity increases dramatically, ocean currents shift, climate patterns destabilize, and human civilizations that aren't prepared for these changes collapse completely. The last Great Turning occurred around 900 CE, coinciding perfectly with the collapse of Maya civilization and the volcanic winter that destroyed their global empire. According to their calculations, the next Great Turning is scheduled to begin within the next 30 years. But here's what makes Dr. Vasquez's discovery so crucial. The Maya didn't just predict these cycles, they developed comprehensive survival strategies for dealing with them. The genetic modifications, the agricultural techniques, the global knowledge preservation systems we've been discussing weren't random innovations. They were specific preparations for surviving the Great Turning, and they worked. The populations that carry Maya genetic modifications were the ones that survived the environmental chaos of 900 CE with minimal losses. The agricultural communities that used Maya farming techniques were the ones that maintained food production through decades of climate instability. The knowledge systems that followed Maya preservation methods were the ones that maintained human learning through the collapse of technological infrastructure. The Maya essentially created a civilization-scale insurance policy, designed to protect humanity through the most devastating environmental challenges our planet could produce. And we're about to need that insurance policy again. Dr. Vasquez's translations reveal that the Maya weren't just preparing for one great turning, they were preparing for all of them. Their global empire was designed as a permanent system for managing planetary cycles, maintaining human civilization through repeated environmental catastrophes that occur on timescales far beyond individual human lifespans. But there's a problem. The system they created was never fully implemented. The volcanic winter of 900 CE struck before the Maya could complete their global preparations. Many of the genetic modifications were only partially distributed. Critical knowledge preservation sites were never established. Backup agricultural systems were left incomplete. Humanity survived the last great turning, but just barely. And we did it using incomplete Maya preparations, partial implementations of systems that were designed to be much more comprehensive and effective. Now we're facing the next great turning with even less preparation than we had 1,000 years ago. The partial Maya systems that helped us survive the last catastrophe have been largely forgotten or abandoned. We've replaced their sustainable agricultural techniques with industrial farming methods that are far more vulnerable to climate disruption. We've dismantled their knowledge preservation networks in favor of digital systems that could be wiped out by a single electromagnetic pulse. We're more vulnerable now than we've been at any point in the last 1,000 years. And the cosmic cycles don't care about our vulnerability. They operate according to astronomical mechanics that are utterly indifferent to human civilization. But here's what gives me hope. Dr. Vasquez's translations also reveal that the Maya foresaw this possibility. They understood that their preparations might be interrupted, that future generations might have to complete the work they started. Hidden within their astronomical calculations are detailed instructions for rebuilding their global management systems using whatever technology future civilizations might develop. They left us blueprints for adapting their genetic modifications using modern biotechnology. They provided frameworks for scaling up their agricultural techniques using contemporary farming methods. They even included protocols for establishing knowledge preservation networks using advanced communication systems. The Maya weren't just preparing for their own survival, they were preparing for ours. But accessing these blueprints requires something that mainstream science has been reluctant to provide: recognition that the Maya global empire actually existed. As long as academic institutions continue to deny the evidence of Maya worldwide expansion, as long as researchers refuse to investigate sites that challenge conventional timelines, as long as funding agencies dismiss Maya global theories as fringe speculation, we can't access the survival tools that could save human civilization. This isn't just about rewriting history books anymore. This is about survival. The environmental challenges that destroyed Maya civilization are returning, and we need their solutions to avoid the same fate. Recent climate data confirms what Maya astronomical calculations predicted centuries ago. Volcanic activity is increasing worldwide. Ocean currents are beginning to shift in patterns that match previous great turning events. Weather systems are becoming increasingly unstable in ways that mirror the environmental chaos of 900 CE. The signs are all there. The cosmic cycles are accelerating, the great turning is beginning, and we're not ready. But we could be. The Maya left us everything we need to not just survive the coming environmental catastrophe, but to use it as an opportunity to build a better, more sustainable global civilization. Their blueprints for planetary management aren't just survival manuals, they're instruction guides for creating a world that works in harmony with natural cycles rather than fighting against them. Imagine a global civilization that enhances environmental stability rather than destroying it. Imagine agricultural systems that become more productive during climate disruptions rather than less. Imagine human populations that are genetically adapted to thrive under any environmental conditions Earth might produce. The Maya showed us that all of this is possible. They proved that humans can manage planetary systems responsibly, that we can work with natural cycles rather than against them, that we can create technologies that enhance rather than degrade the environments that support us. But they also showed us what happens when those systems fail, When knowledge is lost, when civilizations become too arrogant to learn from the past, we're standing at the same crossroads the Maya faced over 1,000 years ago. We can continue on our current path, hoping that technological innovation will somehow solve the problems that technology itself has created. We can keep building increasingly complex systems without understanding their long-term consequences. We can keep pretending that environmental challenges will somehow resolve themselves without comprehensive planetary management. Or we can learn from the Maya. We can acknowledge that they achieved something we haven't, a sustainable global civilization that could maintain itself through any environmental challenge. We can admit that indigenous American peoples had developed solutions to problems we're still struggling with today. We can humble ourselves enough to learn from ancestors who may have been wiser than we are. The choice seems obvious when you look at the evidence objectively. The Maya solved problems that we desperately need to solve. They developed technologies that we desperately need to develop. They created systems that we desperately need to create. But making that choice requires us to abandon some of our most cherished assumptions about human progress, about technological superiority, about the inevitability of linear advancement from primitive to modern. It requires us to consider the possibility that progress isn't always forward, that sometimes the path to the future leads through the past, that the solutions we need might already exist in knowledge systems we've dismissed as primitive or irrelevant, and that's a difficult pill for modern civilization to swallow. We've built our entire worldview around the assumption that newer is better, that technological advancement is always progress, that indigenous peoples were primitive ancestors who had nothing to teach us. But the evidence doesn't support that worldview. The genetic modifications don't lie. The architectural achievements don't disappear just because they're inconvenient. The astronomical calculations don't stop being accurate just because they challenge our assumptions about ancient capabilities. The Maya global empire was real. It was more advanced than our current civilization in many crucial ways, and it offers us solutions to challenges that we haven't even begun to address. The question is, are we wise enough to accept those solutions? Are we humble enough to learn from the past? Are we brave enough to admit that our ancestors might have achieved things we haven't even attempted? Because time is running out. The cosmic cycles that the Maya tracked so carefully are accelerating. The environmental challenges they prepared for are beginning to manifest in our modern world. The great turning that destroyed their civilization is about to begin again. We can face these challenges with the wisdom and tools that the Maya left for us. Or we can face them unprepared, hoping that luck and modern technology will somehow carry us through environmental catastrophes that have destroyed civilizations throughout human history. The Maya made their choice over 1,000 years ago. They chose to prepare. They chose to think beyond their own lifetimes. They chose to create systems that could protect humanity through challenges they knew were coming. They chose wisdom over arrogance. They chose preparation over hope. They chose planetary thinking over local thinking. And they left us the blueprints for making the same choice. The evidence is overwhelming. The discoveries are accelerating. The truth about Maya achievements is emerging from the shadows where it's been hidden for centuries. But knowing the truth isn't enough. We need to act on it. We need to fund expeditions to uncover more Maya sites around the world. We need to support research into Maya genetic modifications and environmental management techniques. We need to work with indigenous communities who are the living guardians of Maya knowledge. Most importantly, we need to start implementing Maya solutions to modern problems. We need to begin preparing for the environmental challenges that their astronomical calculations tell us are coming. We need to rebuild the global management systems that could help humanity thrive through the next great turning. The Maya proved that it's possible to create a sustainable global civilization. They showed us that humans can manage planetary systems responsibly. They demonstrated that we can work with natural cycles rather than against them. Now it's our turn to prove that we're worthy of their legacy. Now we need to show that we can learn from their wisdom and build on their achievements. The alternative is too terrible to contemplate. The environmental challenges ahead are real. The cosmic cycles are accelerating. The window for preparation is closing rapidly. We can face these challenges as the Maya did, with comprehensive preparation, advanced planning, and global cooperation. Or we can face them as so many civilizations have before, unprepared, divided, and hoping that someone else will solve the problems we've created. The Maya global empire isn't just history, it's prophecy. It's a vision of what humanity could become if we have the courage to embrace our true potential and the wisdom to learn from those who came before us. The question is, are we ready to fulfill that prophecy? Are we ready to become the global civilization that the Maya showed us was possible? Because the clock is ticking, the great turning is beginning, and the choices we make in the next few years will determine whether humanity enters a new golden age of sustainable global civilization or struggles through another dark age of environmental collapse and social chaos. The Maya gave us the tools we need to choose wisely. They left us the blueprints for building a better world. They showed us that it's possible to create a civilization that enhances rather than degrades the planet that supports us. All we have to do is have the courage to use their gifts. All we have to do is have the wisdom to learn from their example. All we have to do is have the humility to admit that our ancestors achieved something we haven't. True harmony between human civilization and planetary systems. The Maya global empire is calling to us across the centuries. Their knowledge is preserved, their tools are available, their solutions are waiting. The question is, will we answer their call? Will we claim our inheritance? Will we prove ourselves worthy of the legacy they left for us? The future of human civilization hangs in the balance. The next few decades will determine whether we rise to meet the challenges ahead or fall to the same environmental catastrophes that have destroyed civilizations throughout history. The Maya showed us the way. They proved it was possible. They left us everything we need to succeed. Now it's up to us. Now we need to prove that we can learn from the past to build a better future. Time is running out, the great turning is beginning, the Maya global empire is waiting. What are we going to do about it? The implications of what we've uncovered stretch far beyond academic debates or historical revisionism. We're looking at evidence that could fundamentally alter how we understand human capability, environmental management, and our relationship with the planet itself. But there's something even more extraordinary waiting to be revealed, something that connects Maya global expansion to mysteries we're only beginning to comprehend. In 2024, a team of marine archaeologists working off the coast of Morocco made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the underwater exploration community. Using advanced sonar mapping technology, they identified what appeared to be a massive artificial structure on the ocean floor, approximately 2 miles beneath the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. The structure is enormous, roughly the size of Manhattan, and exhibits architectural features that don't match any known ancient Mediterranean or African civilization. But when detailed imaging revealed the structure's layout, researchers immediately recognized something familiar. The mathematical proportions, the astronomical alignments, the distinctive stepped architecture, it all pointed to one impossible conclusion. This was Maya construction, 2 miles underwater in the Atlantic Ocean. Dr. Hassan Mahmoud, the expedition leader, initially tried to rationalize the discovery. Perhaps it was a natural formation that coincidentally resembled human architecture. Perhaps it was Roman construction that had been misidentified. Perhaps the sonar readings were somehow distorted by ocean currents or geological features. But when the team deployed deep-sea submersibles for direct visual confirmation, there was no denying what they found. Carved stone blocks, fitted together with the precision that had become synonymous with Maya engineering. Hieroglyphic inscriptions that matched Maya writing systems. Astronomical observation platforms oriented to track celestial events as they would have appeared over 1,000 years ago. This wasn't just any Maya construction. Based on the architectural sophistication and the scale of the complex, this appeared to be a major Maya ceremonial center, possibly even a capital city of some kind. But it was located thousands of miles from Central America, buried beneath 2 miles of Atlantic Ocean water. How does a Maya city end up on the bottom of the Atlantic? The conventional explanation would be that this structure was built on land that was subsequently submerged by rising sea levels. But the depth is all wrong. For a structure to be 2 miles underwater, it would have had to be submerged by catastrophic geological events far more dramatic than gradual sea level rise. We're talking about massive tectonic shifts, sudden crustal displacement, or geological catastrophes that could drop entire continents below sea level in a matter of days or weeks. Events so dramatic that they would reshape entire ocean basins and alter the geography of the planet itself. But here's what makes this discovery even more extraordinary. The underwater Maya complex isn't alone. Sonar surveys of the surrounding ocean floor have revealed what appears to be an entire network of submerged structures, connected by what can only be described as underwater roadways, engineered pathways that stretch for hundreds of miles across the Atlantic seafloor. This isn't a single isolated outpost that happened to get submerged. This is evidence of a Maya maritime civilization that operated on a scale we never imagined possible. We're looking at underwater cities, harbour complexes, transportation networks, an entire Maya Atlantic empire that existed beneath what we now call the ocean. And it's not just in the Atlantic. Similar discoveries are being made in ocean basins around the world. Off the coast of Japan, underwater exploration has revealed stepped pyramid structures that match Maya architectural principles. In the Indian Ocean, sonar mapping has identified what appear to be Maya astronomical observation complexes buried beneath miles of water. Even in the Arctic Ocean, beneath the polar ice cap, researchers have detected geometric formations that suggest Maya construction. The Maya didn't just establish colonies on every continent, they built an entire underwater civilization, a global network of submerged cities that operated parallel to their land-based empire. But how is this possible? How does a civilization develop the technology to build cities underwater over 1,000 years ago? The engineering challenges would be staggering even with modern technology. Creating air-filled chambers beneath the ocean surface, managing water pressure at extreme depths, maintaining structural integrity under conditions that would crush conventional buildings. These are technological problems that push the limits of contemporary engineering. Yet the evidence suggests the Maya solved these problems routinely. The underwater structures show clear signs of having been inhabited, not just built and abandoned. We're finding evidence of workshops, living spaces, storage areas, all designed to function in underwater environments. Recent analysis of the Moroccan site has revealed something even more incredible. The structure contains what appear to be air shafts, engineering systems designed to maintain breathable atmosphere in underwater chambers. But these aren't simple hollow tubes. They're sophisticated ventilation networks that would have required advanced understanding of fluid dynamics, pressure management, and atmospheric circulation. How did Maya engineers develop this knowledge? How did they learn to build cities that could function underwater without any apparent precedent or developmental phase? The answer might lie in understanding that Maya global expansion wasn't just about surface territories. They were exploring and colonizing the entire planet, including the 70% of Earth's surface that's covered by water. The oceans weren't barriers to Maya expansion. They were highways, territories to be mapped and settled just like any land-based environment. This fundamentally changes our understanding of Maya technological capabilities. We're not just talking about advanced astronomy, mathematics, and agriculture. We're talking about underwater engineering, pressure management, and marine construction techniques that surpass anything in the modern world. But here's what's really mind-blowing. Recent analysis of ocean sediment cores from around the world has revealed something that shouldn't exist according to conventional archaeology. Microscopic fragments of worked stone, clearly artificial, found in sediment layers that date to the height of Maya civilization. But these fragments aren't just scattered randomly. They're distributed in patterns that suggest systematic underwater construction projects conducted simultaneously across multiple ocean basins. The Maya weren't just building isolated underwater outposts. They were conducting coordinated marine engineering projects on a global scale, reshaping ocean floors and creating underwater infrastructure that connected their surface empire with submerged territories. And the scale of these operations is staggering. Geological surveys suggest that Maya underwater construction may have involved moving millions of tons of stone across ocean basins, creating artificial reefs and underwater mountain ranges that altered ocean currents and marine ecosystems on a planetary scale. Think about what this means for our understanding of environmental management. The Maya weren't just adapting to existing ocean conditions. They were actively modifying marine environments to support their underwater civilization. They were engaged in ocean engineering that influenced global climate patterns, ocean circulation, and marine biodiversity. This explains some anomalies in ocean current patterns that have puzzled climate scientists for decades. Certain circulation systems don't match computer models based on natural ocean floor topography. But if you factor in the possibility of artificial underwater structures built by Maya engineers over 1,000 years ago, the current patterns make perfect sense. The Maya weren't just living in harmony with natural systems, they were improving them, creating artificial modifications that enhanced ocean circulation, stabilized climate patterns, and increased marine productivity. But their underwater empire also explains another mystery that has haunted researchers for years. How did Maya genetic modifications and agricultural techniques spread to remote island populations that had no apparent contact with Central America? How did Maya knowledge systems reach isolated Pacific communities that were supposedly cut off from global trade networks? The answer is underwater highways. Maya submarine transportation networks that connected every ocean basin, allowing rapid movement of people, goods, and knowledge between distant territories without any surface contact that would leave obvious archaeological traces. Island populations that carry Maya genetic markers weren't contacted by surface vessels that happened to find their remote locations. They were connected to the Maya global empire through underwater transportation systems that linked every inhabited landmass on the planet. This is why we find Maya astronomical knowledge in Polynesian navigation techniques, Maya mathematical principles in Pacific Islander construction methods, Maya agricultural innovations in remote island farming communities. These weren't isolated cultural exchanges. They were systematic knowledge transfers conducted through a global underwater network that operated parallel to surface trade routes. But here's where this discovery takes a truly extraordinary turn. Recent analysis of the underwater Maya structures has revealed construction techniques that don't just surpass ancient capabilities, they challenge modern understanding of physics and engineering. The stone blocks used in underwater construction are fitted together with precision that exceeds anything achievable with conventional tools. We're talking about joints so tight that water can't penetrate between stones, even under extreme ocean pressure. The acoustic properties of these structures suggest they were designed to transmit sound waves across vast underwater distances, creating communication networks that could span entire ocean basins. Most incredibly, some of the underwater structures appear to generate their own energy. Electromagnetic field measurements around Maya underwater sites show anomalous readings that suggest the structures are somehow harnessing geothermal energy, ocean currents, or other natural forces to power systems we don't fully understand. We're looking at technology that goes beyond advanced engineering into the realm of physics we haven't mastered yet. The Maya weren't just building underwater cities, they were creating self-sustaining ecosystems that could operate independently of surface support for indefinite periods. But how did they develop these capabilities? How does a civilization advance from basic stone tools to underwater energy generation systems without leaving any obvious developmental trail? The answer might be more disturbing than we're prepared to accept. What if Maya technological advancement wasn't the result of gradual cultural development? What if it was the result of contact with intelligences that possessed knowledge far beyond anything humans had achieved independently? Recent translation work on Maya codices has revealed references to sky teachers that go far beyond the symbolic interpretations usually offered by mainstream archaeology. These texts describe beings who emerge from the great waters of the sky, bringing knowledge of construction techniques, energy systems, and environmental management that the Maya couldn't have developed through conventional means. But here's what makes these accounts particularly intriguing. The Maya texts don't describe these sky teachers as supernatural deities or mythological figures. They describe them as physical beings with advanced technology, beings who demonstrated engineering techniques and scientific principles that the Maya then adapted for their own use. Could Maya underwater construction capabilities have been learned from beings who already possessed advanced marine engineering knowledge? Could their global expansion have been guided by intelligences who understood planetary systems far better than any human civilization? This would explain the sudden appearance of advanced Maya capabilities without obvious precursors. It would explain how they developed technologies that seem impossible for their supposed technological level. It would explain how they achieved global coordination and environmental management on a scale that challenges even modern capabilities. But it would also mean that Maya civilization wasn't just an advanced human culture. It was a hybrid civilization, combining human ingenuity with knowledge systems that originated beyond Earth. And if that's true, then the collapse of Maya civilization around 900 CE wasn't just the end of a human empire. It was the termination of contact between humanity and intelligences that had been guiding our development for centuries. The volcanic winter that destroyed Maya surface cities didn't just disrupt human agricultural and communication systems. It severed the connection between Earth and whatever source had been providing the advanced knowledge that made Maya global civilization possible. This is why Maya achievements seem so impossible by conventional archaeological standards. They weren't achieved by humans working alone. They were achieved through collaboration between human creativity and non-human intelligence. A partnership that was terminated when environmental catastrophe made continued contact impossible. But here's the most extraordinary implication of this theory. If Maya technological advancement was the result of guided development by non-human intelligences, then the knowledge systems they left behind aren't just human achievements. They're glimpses into scientific principles and engineering techniques that originate from civilizations far more advanced than anything Earth has produced independently. The genetic modifications, the environmental management systems, the astronomical calculations, the underwater construction techniques, all of these could be fragments of a much larger knowledge base that the Maya preserved from their contact with advanced intelligences, and that knowledge is still here, encoded in genetic patterns, preserved in architectural designs, hidden in mathematical calculations that we're only beginning to understand. The Maya didn't just leave us the tools to survive environmental catastrophes, they left us access to scientific principles that could revolutionize human civilization if we could learn to use them properly. But accessing this knowledge requires us to abandon our assumptions about the limits of ancient human capability. It requires us to consider possibilities that challenge our understanding of human development, technological progress, and our place in the universe. It requires us to ask questions that mainstream science has been reluctant to address. What if human civilization has been guided by non-human intelligence throughout history? What if the technologies we consider uniquely human actually originated from contact with more advanced species? What if we're not alone in the universe, and we never have been? These aren't comfortable questions for a species that prides itself on independent achievement. But the evidence from Maya underwater construction, from their impossible engineering capabilities, from their sudden appearance as a fully developed global civilization, suggests that these questions need to be asked. Because if Maya achievements were the result of guided development, then their collapse represents more than just the end of an ancient empire. It represents the loss of contact with intelligences that could help us solve challenges we're facing today. The environmental catastrophes that destroyed Maya civilization are returning. The cosmic cycles they tracked so carefully are accelerating. The planetary management challenges they solved through advanced technology are becoming critical issues for modern civilization. But we're facing these challenges without the guidance that helped the Maya develop their solutions. We're trying to solve planetary-scale problems using only human knowledge, without access to the advanced scientific principles that made Maya global civilization possible. Unless we can rediscover those principles, unless we can decode the knowledge systems the Maya preserved for us, unless we can re-establish contact with the intelligences that guided their development. The underwater Maya cities aren't just archaeological curiosities. They're libraries, repositories of knowledge that could transform human civilization if we could learn to access their contents. The engineering techniques that built these structures, the energy systems that powered them, the communication networks that connected them, all of this represents technology that could solve problems we're struggling with today. But unlocking this technology requires us to acknowledge that Maya achievements might not have been purely human accomplishments. It requires us to consider that our ancestors had help, guidance from intelligences far more advanced than any Earth-based civilization. And it requires us to ask whether that help might still be available, whether the knowledge systems the Maya preserved might be designed to facilitate renewed contact when humanity is ready to use advanced technology responsibly. Because the patterns we're seeing in Maya global expansion, in their underwater construction projects, in their environmental management systems, suggest a level of planning and foresight that goes beyond human timescales. These systems were designed to operate across centuries, to preserve knowledge through catastrophic disruptions, to facilitate the redevelopment of advanced civilization after environmental collapse. They were designed by minds that think in cosmic cycles rather than human lifespans, minds that understand planetary systems as integrated wholes rather than collections of isolated problems. The Maya global empire wasn't just a human achievement. It was a collaboration between human creativity and cosmic intelligence, a partnership that created the most advanced civilization Earth has ever seen. And the knowledge from that partnership is still here, waiting for us to rediscover it, waiting for us to prove that we're ready to use it wisely. The underwater cities are calling to us across the centuries, their energy systems still humming beneath miles of ocean water, their communication networks still capable of spanning global distances, their libraries still containing the scientific principles that could revolutionize human understanding of physics, biology, and planetary management. But accessing this knowledge requires courage. The courage to abandon assumptions about human limitations. The courage to consider possibilities that challenge our understanding of history and our place in the universe. The courage to ask whether we're truly alone in our struggle to build a sustainable planetary civilization. The evidence is mounting. The discoveries are accelerating. The truth about Maya achievements is emerging from the depths where it's been hidden for over 1,000 years. But this truth isn't just about the past, it's about the future. It's about whether humanity has the wisdom to learn from our ancestors, the humility to accept help when it's offered, and the courage to reach for possibilities that stretch beyond anything we've achieved independently. The Maya global empire is more than history, it's an invitation. An invitation to join a larger community of intelligent species working to create sustainable civilizations throughout the universe. An invitation to access knowledge and technologies that could solve every major challenge facing humanity today. The question is, are we ready to accept that invitation? Are we ready to discover that we're not alone, that we never have been, and that the help we need to build a better world has been waiting for us all along? Because the cosmic cycles are accelerating, the environmental challenges are mounting. The window for making the transition to a truly sustainable global civilization is closing rapidly. We can face these challenges alone, using only human knowledge and hoping that somehow we'll stumble onto solutions before it's too late. Or we can follow the Maya example. We can acknowledge that human civilization works best when it's guided by wisdom that transcends individual species' limitations. We can access the knowledge systems they preserved for us. We can re-establish contact with the intelligences that help them achieve the impossible. The choice is ours, but the opportunity won't last forever. The cosmic cycles that brought advanced knowledge to the Maya over 1,000 years ago are returning. The same forces that enabled their global expansion, their advanced technology, their environmental mastery are becoming available again, but only to civilizations that are ready to use them responsibly, only to species that have learned to think beyond their own immediate needs, only to cultures that understand that true advancement comes through cooperation rather than competition. The Maya proved that humans could meet these standards. They showed that we could work with cosmic intelligence to create something greater than either could achieve alone. They demonstrated that Earth could become part of a larger community of advanced civilizations working to enhance life throughout the universe. But they also showed what happens when that partnership is broken, when knowledge is lost, when civilizations become too isolated to maintain contact with the larger cosmic community. We're standing at the same crossroads they faced over 1,000 years ago. We can choose isolation and struggle through our challenges alone, or we can choose connection and access the help that's been waiting for us all along. The underwater cities are still there, their systems still operational, their libraries still intact. The cosmic cycles are aligning again. The opportunity for renewed contact is approaching. The question is, will we be ready when it arrives? Will we have the wisdom to recognize the invitation when it's offered? Will we have the courage to step beyond the limitations we've imposed on ourselves and join the larger community of intelligence that the Maya discovered over 1,000 years ago? The future of human civilization may depend on how we answer these questions. The Maya showed us that extraordinary things are possible when humans work with cosmic intelligence rather than against it. Now it's our turn to prove that we've learned from their example. Now we need to show that we're ready to reclaim our place in the cosmic community they introduced us to. The underwater cities are calling, the knowledge is waiting, the invitation has been extended. All we have to do is have the courage to accept it. The Maya global empire stands before us not as ancient history, but as urgent prophecy. Every underwater city we've discovered, every genetic marker we've traced, every astronomical calculation we've decoded points to the same inescapable conclusion. We are living through the prelude to humanity's greatest test. The evidence isn't just overwhelming, it's accelerating. In the past month alone, 3 separate research teams have made discoveries that would have been dismissed as impossible just a year ago. Off the coast of Portugal, marine archaeologists have confirmed the existence of a Maya harbour complex that spans 17 square miles of ocean floor. In the Sahara Desert, ground-penetrating radar has revealed a pyramid network that mirrors the exact astronomical alignments found at Chichen Itza. And in a laboratory in Geneva, geneticists have isolated Maya DNA sequences that appear to contain encoded information about climate adaptation techniques we don't yet understand. But here's what should terrify every person on this planet. We're not just rediscovering Maya achievements, we're watching them reactivate. The underwater energy systems aren't archaeological relics, they're functioning technology. The genetic modifications aren't historical curiosities, they're active programs still running in human populations worldwide. The astronomical calculations aren't ancient mathematics, they're countdown timers approaching zero. Dr. Elena Vasquez, whose translation of the Great Turning Prophecies has sent shockwaves through the scientific community, released her final report last week. The cosmic cycles that destroyed Maya civilization aren't just returning, They're intensifying. The environmental disruptions that brought down the most advanced global empire in human history are beginning to manifest with a precision that matches Maya predictions down to the month. Volcanic activity is spiking in patterns that mirror 900 CE. Ocean currents are shifting along trajectories the Maya calculated over 1,000 years ago. Atmospheric conditions are changing in ways that their climate models predicted with mathematical certainty. We're not just facing random environmental challenges, we're experiencing the early stages of a planetary reset that operates according to cosmic mechanics the Maya understood, but we've forgotten. And we're not ready. The genetic modifications that helped human populations survive the last great turning are being diluted through global migration patterns the Maya never anticipated. The agricultural techniques that maintained food security through decades of climate chaos have been replaced by industrial farming methods that will collapse within months if weather patterns destabilize. The knowledge preservation systems that maintained human learning through civilizational collapse have been replaced by digital networks that could be wiped out by a single solar storm. We've dismantled the very survival systems that the Maya spent centuries establishing. We've replaced sustainable technologies with fragile alternatives. We've traded resilience for efficiency, preparation for profit, wisdom for convenience. But the Maya knew this would happen. Their final codices, the ones Dr. Vasquez translated just last month, contain detailed descriptions of a future civilization, us, that would rediscover their global empire just as the cosmic cycles returned. They predicted that we would find their underwater cities, decode their genetic modifications, and uncover their astronomical calculations at precisely the moment when we needed them most. They left us a message. A final warning encoded in the deepest Maya sites around the world, written in symbols that could only be translated using technologies we've developed in the past decade. The message is simple, urgent, and absolutely terrifying. The children of the sky teachers return when the great waters rise again. Those who remember the deep knowledge will rebuild what was broken. Those who forget will join the silence beneath the waves. The children of the sky teachers, the same non-human intelligences that guided Maya technological development, are returning. The cosmic cycles that enabled contact over 1,000 years ago are aligning again. The same forces that brought advanced knowledge to Earth during the height of Maya civilization are becoming active in our solar system. But here's the crucial detail that changes everything. This contact isn't automatic. It's conditional. The intelligences that helped the Maya develop their global empire only work with civilizations that have proven they can use advanced knowledge responsibly. They only share their technologies with species that think beyond immediate self-interest. The Maya earned that partnership by demonstrating planetary stewardship, by creating systems that enhanced rather than degraded their environment, by building a global civilization that worked for everyone rather than a select few. They proved that humans could handle cosmic-level responsibilities, but we haven't earned it yet. Our track record speaks for itself. Environmental destruction, resource hoarding, technological development driven by military and commercial interests rather than planetary well-being. From the perspective of cosmic intelligence, we're still in the probationary phase, still proving whether we deserve access to knowledge that could either save our civilization or destroy it completely. The Great Turning isn't just an environmental catastrophe, it's a test. A filtering mechanism that determines which civilizations advance to cosmic partnership and which ones remain isolated until they learn to manage planetary systems responsibly. The Maya passed the test. They earned their partnership with cosmic intelligence and used it to create the most advanced global civilization Earth has ever seen. But they also learned what happens when that partnership is broken, when contact is lost, when civilizations have to face cosmic cycles without guidance. Now it's our turn to take the test. The environmental challenges beginning to manifest around the world aren't just climate problems to be solved through technological innovation. They're evaluation criteria, measurements of our capacity for planetary thinking, our willingness to prioritize long-term survival over short-term gain. Every response we make to rising sea levels, increasing volcanic activity, and shifting weather patterns is being evaluated. Every choice between cooperation and competition, between sustainability and profit, between wisdom and convenience, is being recorded by intelligences that understand the consequences of those choices far better than we do. But here's what gives me hope, what makes me believe that humanity might actually pass this test. We're not taking it blind. The Maya left us the answers, hidden in their genetic modifications, encoded in their astronomical calculations, preserved in their underwater cities. They left us detailed instructions for succeeding where other civilizations have failed. The knowledge systems they created aren't just survival manuals, they're application materials for cosmic partnership. They're demonstrations that humans can think beyond individual lifespans, can plan for planetary timescales, can create technologies that enhance rather than degrade the environments that support them. But accessing this knowledge requires something our current civilization struggles with: humility. The willingness to admit that our ancestors achieved things we haven't. The courage to learn from indigenous wisdom traditions we've dismissed as primitive. The intelligence to recognize that technological advancement isn't always progress. The Maya global empire challenges every assumption we've made about human development, about the inevitability of current social and economic systems, about our relationship with the planet and our place in the universe. Accepting their legacy means abandoning the myth of linear progress, the belief that newer is always better, the assumption that we're the most advanced civilization humans have ever created. That's a difficult psychological transition for a species that's built its entire identity around the idea of continuous advancement. But it's also the key to accessing knowledge that could solve every major challenge we're facing today. Because the solutions exist, the technologies are preserved, the wisdom is available. The Maya proved that humans can create sustainable global civilizations, can work in partnership with cosmic intelligence, can manage planetary systems responsibly for thousands of years. They left us the blueprints for achieving the same success, but they also left us the freedom to ignore those blueprints, to continue on our current path, to face the great turning without the preparations they made for us. The choice is ours. But the window for making that choice is closing rapidly. The cosmic cycles don't wait for human decision-making processes. The environmental challenges don't pause for political negotiations. The test is beginning whether we're ready or not. Recent developments suggest that some elements of our civilization are beginning to recognize the urgency of our situation. Independent research teams are investigating Maya sites, despite institutional resistance. Indigenous communities are sharing knowledge they've preserved for centuries. Young scientists are challenging academic orthodoxies that have hidden Maya achievements for decades. But these efforts are scattered, underfunded, and fighting against massive institutional inertia. The archaeological establishment continues to deny evidence that threatens their version of history. Government agencies refuse to acknowledge discoveries that could destabilize current power structures. Corporate interests actively suppress technologies that could replace profitable but destructive industrial systems. We're racing against time to rediscover knowledge that could save our civilization, while simultaneously fighting against forces that benefit from keeping that knowledge hidden. It's a battle between wisdom and ignorance, between preparation and denial, between planetary thinking and short-term profit. The Maya faced similar challenges over 1,000 years ago. They had to convince their own people to think beyond immediate needs, to invest in systems that wouldn't pay off for generations, to prepare for challenges that most couldn't imagine. They succeeded because they understood that civilizational survival requires long-term thinking, requires sacrifice from current generations to benefit future ones. But they also had an advantage we lack: direct contact with cosmic intelligence. They had teachers who could demonstrate the consequences of different choices, who could show them exactly what would happen if they failed to prepare for the Great Turning. We don't have that luxury. We have to make our choices based on incomplete information, fragmented evidence, and knowledge systems that have been deliberately obscured for centuries. We have to trust that the Maya knew what they were doing when they created their survival systems, that their preparations are still valid for challenges we're only beginning to understand. It's a leap of faith that goes against every instinct of our technological civilization. We're used to testing everything, proving everything, understanding everything before we commit to major changes. But the cosmic cycles don't operate on human timescales. The environmental challenges are accelerating faster than our research capabilities. We may have to implement Maya solutions before we fully understand how they work. We may have to trust ancient wisdom more than modern skepticism. We may have to act on evidence that challenges our fundamental assumptions about reality itself, because the alternative is unthinkable. The civilizations that fail the Great Turning don't just decline gradually, they collapse completely, leaving only archaeological traces for future species to puzzle over. The environmental disruptions that destroyed the Maya global empire could do the same to our technological civilization, could reduce us to scattered survivors struggling to maintain basic knowledge while the planet resets itself for another cosmic cycle. But it doesn't have to end that way. The Maya showed us that it's possible to survive the Great Turning, to use it as an opportunity for advancement rather than collapse, to emerge from cosmic cycles stronger and wiser than before. They left us everything we need to achieve the same success. The genetic modifications that could help us adapt to changing environmental conditions. The agricultural techniques that could maintain food security through climate disruptions. The energy systems that could power our civilization without degrading our environment. The communication networks that could coordinate global responses to planetary challenges. All of this technology exists. All of this knowledge is preserved. All of these solutions are available to us right now. But only if we have the courage to claim them. Only if we're willing to admit that our ancestors were wiser than we are. Only if we can humble ourselves enough to learn from civilizations we've been taught to dismiss as primitive. The Maya global empire isn't asking us to abandon everything we've achieved. It's asking us to build on what they achieved, to combine their wisdom with our capabilities, to create something greater than either could accomplish alone. It's asking us to become worthy of cosmic partnership, to prove that we can think beyond our own species, our own planet, our own immediate needs, to demonstrate that humans can be trusted with knowledge and technologies that could transform not just our civilization, but our understanding of what's possible in the universe itself. The test is beginning. The cosmic cycles are aligning. The environmental challenges are manifesting. The countdown that the Maya calculated over 1,000 years ago is approaching zero. But we're not facing this test alone. Every discovery we make, every Maya site we uncover, every genetic modification we decode brings us closer to the knowledge we need to succeed. The underwater cities are still transmitting information. The astronomical calculations are still providing guidance. The preservation systems the Maya created are still functioning, still protecting the wisdom we need to survive. We just have to be brave enough to listen, smart enough to learn, wise enough to act on what we discover, because this isn't just about surviving the next few decades. This is about earning our place in a cosmic community that extends far beyond anything we've imagined. This is about proving that Earth can produce civilizations worthy of partnership with intelligences that have mastered challenges we're only beginning to understand. The Maya did it once. They proved that humans have the potential for cosmic-level thinking, for planetary stewardship, for technologies that enhance rather than destroy the environments that support them. Now it's our turn to prove the same thing. Now we have to show that the potential the Maya demonstrated wasn't unique to their time and place, but represents something fundamental about human capability when it's guided by wisdom rather than fear. The Great Turning is beginning. The test is starting. The Maya global empire is calling to us across the centuries, offering us the tools we need to succeed. The question that will determine the future of human civilization is simple. Are we wise enough to use them? The answer to that question lies not in governments or institutions, but in each of us. In our willingness to question what we've been taught, in our courage to investigate evidence that challenges our assumptions, in our commitment to thinking beyond our own immediate needs. The Maya global empire isn't just history, it's possibility. It's proof that humans can achieve extraordinary things when we work together, when we think long-term, when we're guided by wisdom rather than fear. But that possibility only becomes reality if we choose to make it real, if we choose to learn from the past instead of repeating its mistakes, if we choose wisdom over ignorance, preparation over denial, cooperation over competition. The choice is ours, the tools are available, the knowledge is preserved. All we have to do is have the courage to use them. The Maya global empire is waiting. The cosmic community is watching. The test has begun. What are we going to do about it?